Hi guys, today we're going to be fertilizing the rest of our flower beds. We've already gone through and fertilized the sky pencil holly hedge and all of the hydrangeas. So now we're going to come in on all of the rest of the beds and fertilize everything else. And it is the perfect day to do it. The sun is out, the birds are chirping, it is still, there's no wind, and we're supposed to get a whole bunch of rain tonight, tomorrow, and the next day. So I don't have to water the fertilizer in. Mother Nature is going to take care of that for me, and that's just one less thing I have to do. So I know as far as fertilizers go, there's so many products on the market and they all say they're for a specific thing or an all-purpose or a general. And I know it can seem a bit overwhelming. So let me show you what I'm going to be using today and explain to you why I'm going to use it. So here's a few of the fertilizers that I have on hand. I'm sure you all are familiar with holly tone. We've got plant tone, berry tone, garden tone, and there's so many other tones out there, tomato tone, flower tone, rose tone. And while they all serve a specific purpose, they're all pretty much similar in overall makeup, I guess you could say. Holly tone is more of like an acidic based fertilizer, which is really good for hydrangeas, azaleas, sky pencil holly. I used this on the sky pencil holly when I fertilized them. Plant tone is more of an all-purpose plant food. That's what I'm going to be using primarily today. And then of course you've got your all-purpose garden tone, berry tone for strawberries, blueberries, all of, raspberries, all the berries. So I know I showed you guys a lot of plant-specific fertilizers, but if I was to have just a few on hand as kind of like a general all-purpose fertilizer, I would have holly tone, plant tone, and garden tone. Holly tone for the acid-loving shrubs like hydrangeas, azaleas, sky pencil. Garden tone, which is an all-purpose vegetable fertilizer. You can use it on pretty much all of your vegetables. And then plant tone, which is a general all-purpose plant fertilizer for evergreens and all of your shrubs. Now I will say that they do recommend if you're fertilizing arborvitaes and boxwoods, use plant tone and not holly tone because they like a more neutral pH, and the holly tone is just a little too acidic for them. So rule of thumb, if you're fertilizing your arborvitaes and your boxwoods, use plant tone. Now let me show you the areas that we're going to be fertilizing, and then we'll just jump right into it all. So we're going to be fertilizing pretty much everything in the butterfly garden with the exception of the sedum over there. They do not like to be fertilized, so leave them alone. Now, normally I would come in with bulb tone for the daffodils and give them a plant-specific feeding, but because I don't have any on hand, I'm just going to use plant tone. I'm pretty much going to use plant tone for everything in this bed, with the exception of our little lime standard hydrangea, that I'm going to give it a dose of the holly tone. And look, you guys, we've got some new growth on here. I know the shape is a little wonky, but I'm kind of just letting it do its thing this year since it was a clearance rack rescue. The arborvitae hedge we're not going to fertilize today because I want to take care of this lesser celandine issue and I want to get the lawn mowed first. Then I can come in and fertilize. The boxwood hedge, we are going to be fertilizing this, and this is going to be interesting just because it is a rock bed per se, but there's landscape fabric under here. So typically, if you were to fertilize this without the rocks, let's say there was mulch, you would scoot the mulch back, pull the landscape fabric, and toss some fertilizer in there. But since we have a whole bunch of rocks, we're just gonna put plant tone all around the base of the plants, and that should pretty much soak right in through the landscape fabric and into the soil. The 4 blue pots on the patio, we're gonna come in and fertilize them as well. I cleaned them all out the other day, and they have arborvitaes and boxwoods in here, so we're gonna be using plant tone on them, just like we are on the boxwoods. And in the front beds, we are pretty much going to be doing the exact same thing. Plant tone on the arborvitaes, and pretty much everything else here is just going to get a good dose of plant tone. We're going to do both beds. We've got the buddleias, the dwarf spruce, the limelights and the little limes were already fertilized. So there's really not too much left to do in these beds. All of our boxwoods that we have hanging out here on the patio, they'll get a dose of plant tone as well. A little arborvitae over here. And I still have all of the azaleas sitting in containers all along the fence line here. These I'm actually giving away. A couple of friends are coming to pick them all up. So I will come in and clean them all up and give them some Hollytone fertilizer, water it in for them. That way when they come and pick them up, they can just pop them right in the ground. I'm just going to be eyeballing the amount of fertilizer I use, but if you're unsure, always look at the back of the bag because it has directions for how much fertilizer to apply, and it has a great description of where to apply it because it shows you with a picture and explains where the drip line is. So on the back of the bag, it has how much to use for garden beds, new plantings, established plants, potted plants, and it even has a picture for you of the drip line and how to determine where the drip line is for your plant so you can determine where to sprinkle your fertilizer. And if you're ever unsure how to use it or how much to apply, just follow the manufacturer's instructions on the bag. Let me show you how I'm going to apply the fertilizer, and then we'll just go around to every bed and get everything fertilized. So let me show you on this whipcord arborvitae how to fertilize. Now, if this had been in the landscape, say in one of the beds over here, I would say first let's scoot all the mulch away. But because we barely have any layer of mulch in the beds, we really don't have to do that on a lot of these beds, which is going to save time. But let's say we did. We would just scoot all the mulch away from the base of the plant. So that way we expose the soil. And you can see our drip line would be right here. But because it's in a container, for anything that you're going to fertilize in a container, you just want to sprinkle it along the edge of the container. We'll just take a scoop of plant tone. Fancy dancy measuring cup again. And we'll just sprinkle a little, of course the wind picks up now, around the edge of the container. And then we just scratch it all into the soil. And then we would cover it with mulch and water it in. All right, guys, we got it all done. The beds don't look much different than they did before, other than maybe a little bit of the dirt and the mulch kicked up. I didn't water anything in because, like I said, we are expecting rain this afternoon and for the next couple days. And you can see we did have sun, but now we have nothing but clouds. So I think we've got a couple hours before the rain comes in. Let's start in the front flower bed. We fertilized everything but the hydrangeas because the hydrangeas had already been fertilized. So I used plant tone on the buddleias, the arborvitaes, the dwarf spruce, and everything else except for the sky pencil holly. I used a little bit of holly tone. And for everything, we just sprinkled a little bit all around the drip line, scratched it all in, and Mother Nature is going to water it in for us. Same thing in this flower bed. We fertilized everything but the hydrangeas. We used plant tone on all the arborvitaes and the buddleias. Basically everything in here except for the other sky pencil holly was fertilized with holly tone. And the boxwood hedge, I used plant tone, and I sprinkled it a little bit heavier around each one just because we have the rocks and the landscape fabric as a barrier. So I figure I'm just going to put a little bit more on here than I normally would, and that should penetrate through, and we'll just let the rain water it all in. The 4 blue pots on the corners of the patio, we got those fertilized. I didn't fertilize any of the plants in pots over here. I'm just going to use Biotone starter fertilizer when I get them planted in the ground. Our row of boxwoods that we have over here were fertilized, our little arborvitae, and all of the azaleas got some holly tone, so when my friends come to pick them up, they'll be ready to just pop right in the ground. And we're one step closer to having our spring fertilizing done. We still have the arborvitae hedge and the mixed border hedge, but once we get those done, we'll be good to go. And you know, this whole project didn't take long at all. I'd say about an hour and a half. That's pretty good timing considering how much of an area we got fertilized today. So I'm really happy about that. Anyways, guys, I will put a link in the description box for all of the products that I used today. You can check them out on their website. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.